Today we got an 89 Suzuki 250R. LT 250R, QUADRACER. She's got many little nicknames here, but this is a bike that's always been pretty close to my heart. It is a survivor from the 80s. I know it's not the Honda, but maybe one day we'll get there. But Honda fans can still thank Suzuki, because in 83 they were the first to go from 3 wheels to 4. And that's what kind of set the path for Honda. And then Honda kind of came in and stole the glory from Suzuki. And here we are. I have problems finding parts, getting upgraded parts, aftermarket parts. You know, you Honda guys kind of got it made. So enjoy it while it lasts. But to kind of jump back here, we have a 2-smoke here, and that's what really matters, right? So this bike in particular is in pretty good shape. It has been loved. It hasn't been neglected. What we're gonna do here is just a little mini series on catching up on some maintenance, repairs, some tips and tricks, and get her looking good too. You know, I like the 89, 87 and up, really. Anything with the bubble butt seat. I mean, stop looking at this cover. I hate it too. I think it's hideous. But we'll eventually get to changing that. So stick with me here. And let's get this bike ready, safe, and reliable on the trail. Let's get to work. So I got the front end off the ground. I'm using a dirt bike stand. I like them, even though it's for a quad, but look how high it gets the front end off. Giving a little front end inspection here. When I spin this, I can feel the bearings are a little crunchy. Kind of what I mean by that, you kind of feel like dirt is in there. Maybe they're just corroded. I really don't know how else to explain it, except maybe if you had some rocks and dirt in your hand and you rub them around. Kind of that feeling. So I really can't show you. You can't really hear it. But it spins okay. And I noticed the seals are a little worn, a little old. So we're going to change out the hub bearings and seals today. Of course it's stripped. Fuck wouldn't it be? You don't have to put them this tight. So to get the brake caliper off, you have to remove these 2 bolts. I'm going to loosen up the brake line first, so I have a little bit more room to get to the top bolt. 12 millimeter. Just going to loosen it a little bit, just so it's out of my way. And I'm going to tighten it back up because it's going to make a mess. These bolts are also 12 millimeter. So it's the top one and the bottom one. Break them loose. Slide it off. Hub assembly to come off is pretty simple. Bend your cotter pin to get it off. Cut it, whatever you gotta do. Sometimes they're simple, sometimes they're a pain in the ass. See, cotter pin out. And we're going to loosen that main nut. Bigger than a 15. Bigger than a 17. Come on now. It's a 19. And that's it. Do the same thing on the other side. So over here at the workbench, you can see this is that right rotor with the leaking caliper. You can see the oil on it, or the brake fluid. So we're going to change out the seals, the hub bearings, and put some fresh roadies on it. So since I am changing out the rotors, I'm not really too worried about just putting it in the vise. Putting it in the vise. I don't know what the hell I just said there. So if I cause a little damage, it's no big deal. We had our little napkin here. Pull out the spacer. We will be reusing that. I just use a small pry bar. Pull out the seal, just to kind of show you the other side. I'll flip it around. Pop out that seal. Now we have our bearing. What I try and do, I try and catch the lip or the inner race of the bearing right here. I'm going to hit this one first. So the smaller one is what I like to do, because what I do, I heat this up just a little bit. Help that bearing just want to move a little bit easier, prevent damage to the hub itself. You don't have to go too crazy with heat. Just enough to get that aluminum to open up. Don't forget it's hot. Now you can use your pry or a punch. These will work too. I kind of go with whatever's reaching in there and going to grab it. So these are a little straight, which makes them a little tough to get a good tap on it. So sometimes I'll just use the mini pry bar, but give her some taps. And then she should start to get away from that inner spacer, which will then give me a little bit more room. She's gonna pop. She might pop. See, jing. Now, if I damage this bearing a little bit, that's okay. It's the hub I'm trying not to damage. Are you ready? It's gonna be a little warm, just to remind you. Now inside, there's a spacer. So on the Suzuki, it has a little bit of a tapered end. You want the tapered end towards the small end. Now this bearing's easier. That's why I don't really worry about heating this side up. If you can see in there, that's where we're going to be hitting to easily pop out this bearing, because I can get right on it and hit it. It's just a regular punch. Yes. That's it. Seals are off. Bearings are out. Check it for any damage. If you damage the hub, you're going to have to clean that up. You're going to clean up any of the burrs. Use a Dremel. That'll kind of be your best thing. But if you're careful, and if you're hitting the bearing race itself and not the hub, you shouldn't have any problems. These bearings are open. One side's sealed, one side's not. These new ones, both sides are sealed. So you can see both sides are sealed. Now I prefer this, less maintenance. It's gonna last longer. A lot of dust out there. So now that we have it like that, all we're gonna do is I will lay it flat on the anvil side. I like to put a little bit of grease. Grease up inside the hub. Throw a little bit on the race. Clean off my paws. I said my paws, not my balls. Jeez. Now to tap it into place, I usually just turn the hammer first, get a couple taps. And I get an impact. I think this 19 will work. And it's on the inner race. So whatever you use, just make sure it's hitting the race, not the bearings. Then I just tap her in. Then go center. And then once you hear that dink, that means it's all the way seated. So you can you can feel it probably a little better than you can probably try and hear it. But it just stops. Give it a little test. Make sure everything's spinning. Make sure you didn't damage it. And continue forward. Flip it over. We're going to clean up our center spacer. Just make sure you don't forget to put this in, because when you get these new bearings in and then you want to, or I'm sorry, once you get the new bearings in and you forget this and then you got to beat them back out, you may damage them. So tapered end. See the taper? It's hard to show the taper. There we go. Let's remember, tapered end towards the small bearing. Get a little bearing. Repeat, a little bit of grease. Okay, let's make sure we double check. Okay, I have that center piece in there. I'm ready to hit it. 19's too big. Go with something smaller. 15 smells good. 15. All right. I like to use sockets. They just, I don't know, universal tool. Another one. So once I get it flush, take her down till you feel a solid hit. Bigger seal, smaller seal. Start with the small one. Now, normally, you could fill that with a little bit of grease. All depends on the bearings. Remember, these are sealed bearings. No point. There's no point. It doesn't matter. So, but you are going to do cup side towards the bearing. So just think about packing it with grease and stuff like that. It's a little dry, so we'll just put a little bit on the outside just so it doesn't tear. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier once we go to, if we ever have to do this again. Next time we have to do this. So a little bit of grease on the outside of it. And then I just press it in by hand. I try not to have to hit it with anything, because it's just a rubber seal. Just push it in. If it's a little tight like this one, I'll give it a little tap with a hammer. It should be flush. Flush with the hub. Just repeat on the other side. Put a little bit of lubage. Remember, don't forget, cup side towards the bearing. And then don't forget your spacer. Get that a little bit of a wipe. And then your spacer goes in place. And that's it. I can feel it, that everything spins. There we go. So, I like it. 6mm. So rotors are really simple to change. I mean, that's it. 3 Allen bolts. Something clean. So 3 Allen bolts. And we'll take our rotor. A new one. Ooh, that's fresh. Of course they put a sticker on it, right? Like, why? Why the f*** did you put a sticker on the rotor? Why do you gotta do that to me? You can see on the rotor, it has an indent for where the hardware goes. You want that facing out, facing towards you, just like that. So then these, the hardware, can sit flush. Because if it was vice versa, if you put it in wrong, it's gonna sit down, but you see how it's not flush now? So we want it to be flush so it rests inside the rotor. I know you guys are probably hating that I'm not painting these, I'm not cleaning them up. And that's really because, look, I like it when the plastics look good, I like it when the bike looks pretty fresh, but all this stuff, you know, this gets used and abused on the trails. So, you know, it's only gonna look pretty your first 1 or 2 times, and then it's gonna look like crap. Blue Loctite on the hardware. We want these to stay put. If you ever wonder, like, oh, how much Loctite do I even put on? You want to cover the thread. Oh, let's see if she focuses. There you go. Cover the thread. Jesus. Cover the thread. It'll dry. Just helps hold them, keep them from backing off. Right, ultimately you are tightening them, which is what is holding them in place. This is just keeping from vibrations wanting to back it off. So they're snug. We'll go snug. I guess that's about a 1/4 to a 1/2 turn. That's about a 1/4 turn on this one. And that's it. That's tight. That's good. The Loctite will help hold it in place. Now, both hubs are ready to be installed. Before I put the hub on, I like to try and clean up the spindle a little bit, because any dirt and debris on this is going right where the bearings are. So I just take a little scuff pad. I got a little bit more of a coarse one here if it was really grimy. And just clean it up right around where the hub rides, spins, whatever. You and your words. That looks really good. Little brake clean spray. A clean paper towel would make life a little bit easier. Get your lube. I like to put some grease on this. So this way as it gets in there, it kind of slides on the spacer, all that stuff. Take your hub you just fixed. Slide it on. Everything should just kind of go into place. It shouldn't fight you. If it's fighting you, then you got to figure out what the problem is. Turn it a little bit towards you now. So you can see that it's spinning. Take our washer and our castle nut. Now the manual says to torque this, I think it was between like 36 and 58. These aren't things I really remember. I just happen to look. So we're gonna get it on there. I am gonna torque it. You know, this is your hub. We're gonna go about 50, unless that's too tight, but that's where I'd like to start. I think that's gonna be awfully tight. So there's 50 pounds. Yeah, that spins good. Once you have a tire on there, a little more weight, it'll spin really well. Worst case, all I gotta do is just back it off a little bit, maybe retorque it to 45, but 50 feels pretty good. Throw a cotter pin in that. I think it should be a little fatter than that. That feels good. Drop the cotter pin in. Bend it up. Man, I don't have any of my shit. Clip it. I like to keep the bottom one straight. Just make it shorter. There you go. The hub has been rebuilt, replaced. We're going to continue on the next video coming up. We're going to replace the calipers, the brake lines, front and rear, bleed them out real nice, and then that'll help complete this whole area of the hub. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to like, don't forget to subscribe if you haven't, and I'll see you on the next one.